Please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Greetings, family, and welcome back to Raising the Vibe. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. In this particular video, I would like to talk about the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding government and social media. Before we get started, I would ask if you're not already a subscriber to this channel that you click on that subscribe button, and definitely click on that thumbs up to indicate that you like this video. Now let's get into it. The case was called Murphy versus Missouri, and it sought to limit the federal government's ability to contact social media companies with regard to content. And just this week, the Supreme Court threw the case out. The Supreme Court said that the plaintiffs failed to show a link between the restrictions on their content that they alleged and the actions of the federal government officials. Two lower courts took a different approach in that case. The first trial court issued an injunction preventing the government officials from contacting social media companies to request removal of so-called misinformation or disinformation. And then the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals modified that injunction, but still it prevented government officials from acting in that manner. But again, as I said, the Supreme Court threw the case out altogether, which means that, at least as it stands now, there are no restrictions on the government's ability to contact TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, I guess X, whatever, Instagram, whatever other platforms it wishes to, and request that those companies remove content that the government claims is misinformation or disinformation. I guess for me, the issue is how to classify what is misinformation or disinformation. For example, with regard to the pandemic, there were varying opinions about what the truth and what the falsehoods were, what were conspiracies and what were actually proven to be reality, even though it was not in line with the official narrative. And it seems to me that as Americans, that is our fundamental right of free speech, which is enshrined in the Constitution in the First Amendment. And it allows us to say things that other people, including the government, don't agree with. That is what the First Amendment is. And I think that it insults the intelligence of Americans to think that they cannot see or hear an argument and say, I don't buy it. I don't agree with it. But just because the government disagrees with it doesn't mean it should be shut down. But back to the case. So it turns out that since 2016, the government has been having routine, recurring meetings with social media platforms. Those meetings began in 2016, where there were claims that Russia was trying to interfere with our presidential election. And those meetings have continued since that time, until, of course, the lower courts issued the injunctions. But now that the Supreme Court has thrown the case out, the injunctions are null and void, and the government is free to resume meeting with social media platforms and encouraging, some say pressuring them to remove information that the government considers false. Now, it's important to note that the court didn't rule on the actual question of whether or not it's proper for government officials to request removal of information from social media platforms. Instead, They sidestepped the issue in ruling that the plaintiffs who brought the suit didn't have standing, that is, legal position or
Right.
to bring the lawsuits. So they threw it out on that ground. Every plaintiff must have standing to file the suit. They must have a stake in the claim that's at issue. And there are some other elements of standing as well. But the bottom line is that the court didn't address the real issue. They booted the case on technical grounds and left everything else up for discussion. And also, in doing so, removed those injunctions that stopped the federal government from pressuring these social media companies. So there was a 6-3 split in the voting, with 6 justices making the majority, ruling in favor of throwing the case out, and then 3 justices ruling against throwing the case out. The 6 Supreme Court justices who determined to throw the case out were Barrett, Kavanaugh, and Roberts, all conservatives, and then 3 liberals, Jackson, Kagan, and Sotomayor. And those together made up the majority that got rid of the case.
And let me point out here that it is the Republicans who realize that so-called content moderation is actually censorship. So this ruling is considered a win for Biden and the Democrats, who want to continue interfering with what we are able to post on social media.
The remaining 3 justices dissented, including Thomas. So Justice Alito wrote the dissent and said something that I think many Americans would agree with. I'm going to read it verbatim. He said, "For months, high-ranking governmental officials placed unrelenting pressure on Facebook to suppress Americans' free speech. And I would add to that, they placed unrelenting pressure on TikTok, Instagram, X, and all the other social media platforms." And I think, many Americans would agree with that statement. Now, one of the big issues was that the justices said that there were a lot of factual inaccuracies in that case. Justice Barrett wrote the majority opinion, and she said that the plaintiffs did not do enough to prove that it was governmental pressure on the social media companies that directly led to their posts being censored, and that they also failed to prove that they were in imminent danger of governmental conduct resulting in the suppression of their future posts. She was of the opinion that social media platforms make their own decisions about how to moderate content and what should or should not be removed. And she pointed to instances where the government attempted to have posts removed, but the social media platform said, no, this doesn't violate our policies, and did not remove it. In the law, we attorneys have a saying that bad facts can create bad law. And this is almost that kind of situation because of the bad facts. And in this case, that would be the factual inaccuracies and misrepresentations in the plaintiff's case that resulted in this undesirable outcome, at least from my opinion. Now, I have seen commentators saying that this was an important ruling because social media companies need to be able to hear the government's views on particular posts without feeling pressured to change their moderation policies. But in my humble opinion, this is just kicking the can further down the road of preventing Americans from being able to say what they want to say on social media. There are posts too numerous to count talking about how videos have been taken down for so-called misinformation that's not, how accounts have been banned. As a matter of fact, there's a content creator that I followed on TikTok. He had over 250,000 followers, and I just saw a post from him today saying that TikTok banned his entire account for talking about something that's going on in the oceans, and that he got fired from his job today. I myself just posted a video on TikTok maybe 2 days ago showing where I was just going through my account settings and noticed that 4 of my videos had been withheld as ineligible for recommendation. And if you know me, you know I'm talking about things and switching over to an article excerpt. Pretty much the things that I say are very well documented and supported. And just for, I don't even know what reason, TikTok held these 4 videos back. They allowed them to be on my page, but unbeknownst to me, they were not showing them to other viewers. So I got low views on that. And I think that most of us feel that the social media platforms are going too far in suppressing our free speech, in violating our First Amendment rights. They remove emojis and comments that we post. If you're not a content creator, chances are you still had a comment blocked. We can just put up an emoji and they will block that thing. And I think that content creators, I know for a fact actually, that many content creators are self-censoring to try to avoid having their videos taken down and their account banned. So you'll see them saying things like, I can't say this on this platform, so you'll have to read between the lines. Or, we're saying unaliving and making up words and saying words like grape for other things, because we know that there are certain keywords that are going to get our video banned. And I just think it's too much. And as I said before, I think that it underestimates the intelligence of most of the American population, because we're intelligent enough to hear something that may or may not be true and make a decision about whether or not we believe it. That's our fundamental right. That's our fundamental right as Americans. That's what free speech is all about. It's not only about the words that come out of your mouth, it's the things that you believe. And if you can't say certain things, it's almost like you're being censored for believing in certain things. I don't want to go on and on with this video. I wanted to pop on here as a lawyer and a content creator to say, hey, look what the Supreme Court ruled, and the very things that we've been concerned about are going to continue. Some commentators are saying that this is especially important in an election year for the government to be able to request that social media companies remove what the government views to be misinformation or disinformation. But it seems to me that that would work very much in favor of the incumbent, because a lot of the things that the opponent are saying will clearly be, from the government's perspective, misinformation or disinformation. Really, our country's going down a bad road in very many aspects. And most of us as Americans aren't doing a darn thing about it, other than making these videos, complaining to each other, and just not doing anything. And unfortunately, we definitely are getting to a place where Americans are going to have to either stand up for their rights, as Bob Marley would have put it, or find ourselves being totally controlled. That is my opinion. I'm disappointed in the Supreme Court. As a lawyer, I do understand that bad facts, as I said, result in bad decisions. And so one good thing about this is that it doesn't rule out other plaintiffs with more evidence, with a tighter causation chain from coming in and filing suit and then alleging that, government interference is resulting in a restriction or violation of their First Amendment rights. And I imagine that we will see that coming down the pike. But in the meantime, we're stuck with the government interfering with our ability to say what we want to say on social media. So, as I pointed out, there are a number of commentators who disagree with me. And, there's always room for disagreement. In my world, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. It is not my job or the government's job or the social media company's job to suppress points of view. So, as always, I'd like to hear your opinion. What do you think? I'd be interested to hear. And until the next video, family, peace and love and light.
Please like this video and subscribe to the channel.